Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump has imposed an additional 10% tariff on imports into the United States after the Supreme Court struck down many of his sweeping and often arbitrary duties, delivering a stinging rebuke on his signature economic policy. French President Emmanuel Macron said that the US Supreme Court ruling on President Donald Trump's trade tariffs show that it is good to have counterweights to power and the rule of law in democracies. US President Donald Trump will visit China from March the 31st to April the 2nd for talks with his counterpart Xi Jinping. The trip comes after the Supreme Court struck down several of Trump's China-focused tariffs. Serbia and Sweden have urged their citizens in Iran to leave the country. The warning follows growing concerns over the possibility of military confrontation after US President Donald Trump said he was considering a limited strike if negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program fail. Attacks carried out by Israel in eastern Lebanon has killed 8 members of Hezbollah. An official from the militant said Lebanon's health ministry has said that a total of 10 people were killed in strikes that hit the East Bekaa region. Venezuelan authorities have granted amnesty to 379 political prisoners after a new law was enacted by interim authorities following the US toppling of former leader Nicolas Maduro. Venezuela's National Assembly unanimously adopted the law a day before, providing hope that hundreds of political prisoners behind bars may soon be released. India and Brazil signed an agreement on critical minerals and rare earth minerals. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said after talks in New Delhi with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the agreement is a major step towards building resilient supply chains, said PM Modi. And a Philippine senator called for deepening defense relationships and continuous pushback against China's claims in the South China Sea while visiting one of Manila's tiny possessions in the disputed waterway. And we have some breaking news. US officials have reportedly accepted Iran's red line of continuing uranium enrichment, according to an Iranian diplomat quoted by the Iran Students News Agency. The diplomat indicated that the idea of halting Iran's nuclear enrichment entirely was dismissed during recent talks in Geneva. Instead, negotiations are focusing on the technical aspects of Iran's nuclear program, such as the location, level and number of centrifuges. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi echoed these remarks, stating that the US had not demanded zero enrichment and that both sides aim for a fast deal. Although no date has been set for further talks, both sides reported progress, with discussions moving towards a potential agreement. We are now being joined by Dr. Luciano Zaccara, who's an associate professor in Gulf politics, joining us from Doha. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. So, with this new development that it probably shocked everyone, because we were hearing more and more today that more naval ships and aircrafts were going over to the Middle East and getting ready and talking about where Trump could attack and who he would attack. And now we've heard this U-turn that they have decided there is somewhat of an agreement somewhere. What could this tell us about the tension between them two so far?
Well, I think the first thing is that the aspiration or the demands of the US were too much. I mean, the demands were very maximalist, and not even in 2015, United States was requiring, or not even the atomic energy is requiring Iran zero enrichment. The only need that they are requiring is transparency, verification, safeguard agreements to be signed in order to prove that the nature of the Iranian nuclear program is indeed Pacific, and there is no deviation to a military program. And this is what the JCPOA meant by then. So asking for zero enrichment is to come back, not to 2015, is to come back before even the Islamic Revolution, when the Shah started to prepare a nuclear program in the 1970s. So I think that Trump noticed that, okay, in order to achieve something from the Iranians, to move something one more step from their maximalist position, they need also to make some changes. And accepting that Iran could keep enrichment facilities and enrichment process legally and under the NPT and under supervision is something that it was necessary to do, to claim that there is still room for negotiations.
Thank you, Dr. Luciano, but please don't go too far, as I will be coming back to you very soon. And now for the stories of the hour. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest warship ever built, has transcended the Strait of Gibraltar and entered the Mediterranean, making a significant US military deployment amid rising tensions with Iran. According to reports, the aircraft carrier, reportedly carrying 4 North Grumman E-2D Advanced Hawkeye aircraft, has been tracked and verified through satellite imagery. This follows a build-up of US military assets in the region, including nearly 50 US military aircrafts, such as transport, reconnaissance and refueling jets heading towards the Middle East. The US President Donald Trump has stated that a decision on whether to strike Iran or pursue a deal will be made in the coming days. This is part of the ongoing escalation of pressure on the Iran, and the US increases its presence in the region. Further operational details on the USS Gerald R. Ford's mission remain undisclosed. We are now being joined back by Dr. Luciano Zaccara. Thank you for joining us back. So, obviously, not long ago, we heard about this breaking news. And again, what we were saying is they released aircrafts and everything. But Trump did say he doesn't know whether to attack or to get a deal. Do you think Trump was using that he was going to attack and send over all these military personnel over to intimidate Iran? Or do you think Iran wasn't intimidated at all?
Well, I think that the main objective from the American side is to show all the cards that they are going to be used in case there is a need to use military force. And accumulating such a big, a massive amount of military forces with 3 aircraft carriers and moving a lot of airplanes to the region can give an idea that the United States has been serious, or is being serious, in terms of what would happen if Iran was not reaching an agreement with Donald Trump. So at some point, we all assumed that if there was no positive answer, considered positive for the United States, something would have happened. And here in the region, we have been waiting for this attack to happen since January. So we wouldn't be surprised that if something happened. In order to launch an attack, the United States needs as much as possible here to prevent a spillover effect, to prevent retaliation from the Iranian side. So that's why it was not possible to be done in January, when there was only 1 aircraft carrier, because this would have given Iran the chance to retaliate, something that the regional neighbors and the allies of the United States did not want. The problem is the final decision is still and only in the hands of Trump, whether he feels satisfied or not with the response from Iran. He will be the only one deciding whether the United States is going to attack or not. Therefore, even though there are 3 big armadas there or fleets there, this doesn't mean they will be attacking. However, if there is no such a big mobilization, doesn't mean that they will not attack. It will all depend on how satisfied Trump feels from the process of negotiation. In June, he was not happy. Now we'll see what is going to happen.
Thank you, Dr. Luciano, but please don't go too far as we will be back very shortly. Hezbollah official Mahmoud Quamti declared that the group's only option after an Israeli strike killed 8 fighters in eastern Lebanon was resistance. Speaking during a protest in Beirut, Quamti condemned the Israeli attack in the Bekaa region as a new massacre and emphasized that there was no other choice for Lebanon's defense. This also comes at a time when Hezbollah rejected the Lebanese government's decision to grant the army at least 4 months to advance the second phase of the nationwide disarmament plan. The group had stated that it would not accept what it sees as a more serving Israel. Meanwhile, Iran condemned the Israeli attacks on Lebanon, particularly in the Bekaa region and the Ain al-Hilwa Palestinian refugee camp, which resulted in over 40 casualties. Iran called on the United Nations and its Security Council to intervene and hold the Israeli regime accountable for its actions, citing violations of Lebanon's sovereignty. We are now being rejoined by Dr. Luciano Zaccara. Thank you for rejoining us here today on NewsX World. Now, with this, it just seems like a bit of a difficult one, as they're meant to go to the second part of their trade deal, and obviously they haven't, and they're trying to see how they could go about this in a right way. How would you say what is going to happen next? What do you think is the next step for both parties? And do you think Iran getting involved, contacting the United Nations, will actually do something?
Well, at this point, it's difficult to know. Unfortunately, the international organizations haven't proved to be very efficient in any aspects. We know that there are many parties are trying to reach the United Nations when things are not on their side, and trying to make the United Nations or the international organizations to comply with the rules, comply with the international rules. But so far, this proven not to be efficient on the side of the weakers, let's say. So in this case, Iran, every time that they try to reach out with the United Nations Security Council to find out support, it was not there. Always, or at least since the Gaza war until now, we noticed that the international law is only applicable in the cases that the so-called Western countries that they created the system are the ones that they are managing that. So I don't think we will find any positive outcome in this term in the United Nations.
Thank you, Dr. Luciano. Don't go too far, as we will be back with you very soon. The Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has condemned the remarks made by the US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, calling them a clear call to violate international law. The OIC described Huckabee's statements as dangerous and irresponsible, which promote the expansion of Israel and the seizure of more Palestinian and Arab land. These remarks were based on a false narrative that undermines the sovereignty of states and violates diplomatic norms, international law, UN resolutions, and UN Charter. The OIC warned that such extremist rhetoric would fuel extremism and encourage Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories. leading to further instability and insecurity in the region. The organisation reiterated its firm support for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, particularly their right to self-determination and the establishment of an independent state based on the borders of June 4, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. We are now being rejoined by Dr. Luciano. Thank you for rejoining us here today on NewsX World. What role does the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation play in responding to such diplomatic statements? And how should the community separate an ambassador's personal statements from official US policy?
Well, and the second question I think is the most important. Why the US representative, US ambassador is defending the claims, the historical or biblical claims of another state, of another land that doesn't belong to any of them. So this is one of the most bizarre things I ever heard. I mean, this interview, how he defended the biblical right of Israel to own those lands. I think that this is the main thing, that this shouldn't have happened, and it should be the American government who is dismissing what this ambassador claimed. The problem is we know that Trump administration will not do that. I think it's important to see these kind of statements from the OIC, but I think it would be much more interesting to see other states or other organizations, supranational organizations, European Union, basically, the United Nations and other institutions, that they are rejecting those claims, because this is totally against the Charter of the United Nations, but it's also, again, any kind of logical consideration about what is the right of every nation to hold every land. We all know that there are many places in Europe, in Asia, in Africa that they are disputed according to different narratives, different histories, different ways that colonial powers divided the land, but we cannot enter into a debate and provide this debate legal validity or even political actuality, claiming that we have to come back to the Bible to claim which land belongs to each one in a already so complicated region of the Middle East. I think it was a very irresponsible statement by this ambassador.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luciano Zacara, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says a stronger BRICS bloc could reshape the foundations of global trade. In an interview, Lulu said BRICS now represents nearly half of humanity and a significant share of global GDP. He said that gives the group the weight to create a new dynamic in trade, cultural ties and relations between nations. Lulu stressed that Brazil supports multilateralism and free trade. He said his country does not want a new Cold War and will maintain strong trade ties with the United States, China, India and Russia. We are now being joined by Ross Feingold, who is a political analyst, joining us from Taiwan. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Ross. It was a lovely speaking to you. How could the growing influence of BRICS change the rules or structure of global trade compared with traditional Western-led systems?
We have to keep in mind that there's an element of wishful thinking, both in what President Lula said and in the whole concept of BRICS as well. Sure, there are some members of BRICS that would like to see it become an ever stronger platform and a way to counter the influence of the United States and or Western Europe. But there are other countries that are going to strive to remain friends with everyone. And even the remarks of Lula sort of indicated that. He has a good relationship with China. At the moment, he doesn't have a good relationship with President Trump. But if it was a different president, like President Biden up until a little over a year ago, it was a better relationship. So the key point here is, yeah, there's some aspirational parts of what BRICS does or a lot of what BRICS does, but are they really going to be a free trade bloc that challenges the influence, economical or political or military, of the United States or the Western European countries, or even China on its own, and the influence that China has? Probably not.
Thank you so much, Ross, for joining us here today on NewsX World. It's a pleasure speaking with you. We have some breaking news. Germany's Chancellor designate Friedrich Merz says the latest US Supreme Court ruling on tariffs showed that the separation of powers in the United States is still functioning. Speaking after the decision, Merz called it a reassuring element amid growing trade tensions. He says he expects the tariff burden on the German economy to be reduced following the court's verdict. Merz also stressed that Germany will closely coordinate with its European partners. He says the European Union will represent a clear and united position on the issue. Merz told that Berlin must first speak with the American government. He also added that he will travel to Washington in just over a week for talks. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva called for urgent UN reform, particularly in the UN Security Council, during his visit to India. According to reports, he supported both India and Brazil as permanent members, emphasizing the need for a more representative body. Reports suggest that President Lula highlighted the G4 group advocating for UNSC reform. The leaders also focused on strengthening the India-Brazil strategic partnership across trade, energy, defense, and AI. Some more breaking news for you now. Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi and Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani held a phone call on Saturday to discuss regional and international developments. Araghchi briefed Al Thani on the latest status of indirect talks between Iran and the United States. Both diplomats stressed the importance of continuing consultations to facilitate and advance the diplomatic process. The decision highlights ongoing efforts by Tehran and Doha to coordinate on regional issues and support dialogue aimed at easing tensions. This comes amid broader international focus on US-Iran negotiations and stability in the Gulf region. In an exclusive conversation with NewsX World, G. Mota, head of the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce, discussed the thriving business cooperation between India and Brazil. Mota praised India as a friendly country and stated that both countries could help each other greatly in areas such as trade and development. He pointed to the strong ties and mutual benefits that can arise from further enhancing their cooperation. Listen in.
So we have with us Mr. Guy Mota, who's head of the India-Brazil Chambers of Commerce. Sir, thank you so much for exclusively speaking to NewsX. I would, begin by asking, that since, the BRICS is expanding, a lot of new countries have been added to BRICS, and India and Brazil are an active members of the BRICS grouping. How do you see the trade panning out between India and Brazil in the next few years, if you can throw light over it?
Sure. I think that India and Brazil have a really complementary background and solutions that we can improve and help each other. So I would say that basically Brazil can help a lot India with food security in agricultural business, as well India must help Brazil with pharmaceutical products, technology products. So we have a complementary trade portfolio that we can exchange between each other.
Like if you can just considering the vibrant diplomatic relations between India and Brazil, both countries are strategic allies for several years. We have seen how both countries have collaborated in several almost very very critical domains. We saw that during the COVID pandemic also, India provided a lot of vaccines to Brazil. What are the key sectors, if you could name some sectors where both India and Brazil have expanded their trade in the recent few years, and they expect to do the same in the next few years. What are the key sectors, if you would like to name some?
No, you are totally right. India and Brazil are like a brothers. We say that we have a samband connection between India and Brazil. So, particularly on agribusiness opportunities, technology, pharmaceutical, oil, and energy transition, Brazil can collaborate a lot with India. And of course, mining sectors and like critical minerals, Brazil has a lot to offer and help India keeping the development that's happening right now here.
So, like if I may ask you, like considering the global trade tensions that have happened due to these tariffs that are being imposed by the United States of America on several countries, today the decision has come by the US Supreme Court, where they have declared these tariffs imposed by Trump administration as illegal. So how do you see now the global economy getting on a backtrack? Because in the recent years we have seen how tariffs have they have created some problem in the global supply chains and stuff like that. So what is your take on that, if you can take, particularly with respect to these tariffs imposed by the United States of America?
In fact, that's really good for Indian-Brazil relationship, because we don't depend only from USA anymore as well. India don't need to keep and depend on USA anymore, that we have like two really large economies that we can have a lot of tie-ups and we can work helping the economies of both countries. So what's happening right now on the geopolitical scenario is just like putting closer India and Brazil. And the overview of this relation, we're going to grow even more for the next coming years.
Right, if you can tell how currently what percentage of tariffs has the United States of America imposed in Brazil at this juncture?
Yeah, it was like 50% before. Of course, with the diplomacy, with like some deals that were like working with USA, we are reducing that and putting Brazil again on a chance of keeping doing business with US. But again, as an India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce, we are totally focused on increasing the relationship between India and Brazil. This is the most important for us. We had last year Narendra Modi ji visiting Brazil, and we were celebrating on that time Raksha Bandhan. So that's the point that we want to do. We want to see every time even Brazil and India closer and as a brothers and sisters and having more and more connections.
Thank you so much for exclusively speaking to NewsX. So this is Aditya Vadhavan reporting for NewsX with video journalist Ankush, New Delhi.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.